Hey everyone, Ian here from Coastal Drone. At UAV Expo 2025, I had the chance to chat with a fellow Canadian, John from Sparrowhawk. His team has been working on something that's a game changer for drone operations, affordable, reliable radar for detect and avoid. If you follow the drone industry, you know that detect and avoid has been one of the biggest hurdles to scaling up commercial operations. Sparrowhawk has been at this since 2018, working with Transport Canada and now earning FAA approvals as well. That means our system isn't just theoretical, it's been proven in Canada, and now it's opening doors in the United States. So what really stood out is their vision of radar as a service. Basically, infrastructure that monitors the skies in the same way that internet service providers manage data. This could unlock large-scale drone delivery and heavy lift operations across cities, farms, and industrial sites here in Canada and abroad. We talked about everything from the economics of drone delivery to regulatory milestones to how this technology might roll out region by region. So this is a look at the future of UAV infrastructure, and it's coming from Canadian innovation. Let's jump into my conversation with Sparrowhawk now. Okay, so I'm here with John from Sparrowhawk, a fellow Canadian, down here in Las Vegas, and I just wanted to talk to you real quick. We mentioned last week we were talking about detect and avoid DAA technology, and really what I want to do is first talk to the man himself and talk to the company, and what is Sparrowhawk really about, and what do you see right now, and what's your most exciting thing happening for you coming this November?
So I'd say Sparrowhawk is making drones be what they've always, the promise of drones, right? The promise of drones for years, they can deliver your packages, they can deliver you possibly with urban air mobility. And I think the challenge has been the economics and the regulations. So
Right.
Those are the two biggest challenges. With Sparrowhawk, we've been trying to deal with both. So the focus here was to use a more inexpensive but highly reliable marine radar to track aircraft. And so this, as UAV operators ourselves in Canada, now flying BVLOS for 5 years, we needed a way to manage this problem, right? Again, maintain our economics so that we're still cheaper than a manned surveillance alternative, as well as be safe, right? And so we've been working with Transport Canada going back to 2018, using this exact radar to do that implementation. And so we've now been approved by Transport Canada and now the FAA as well.
Wow, okay.
So the big news is we were approved by the FAA and 2 different drone as a first responder applications here in the United States.
From your perspective on the regulations, so you've, like you said, since 2018, you've been working with Transport Canada on this.
Yeah.
Now we've got, well, our notice of proposed amendment came out in 2020. Now it's real. It's no longer just this something in the future.
Yeah.
So November 4th, we've got limited low risk beyond line of sight operations. What is the most exciting thing coming out of this for you with the changes that are coming?
I think the drone delivery market, I've been saying for, probably 10 years, I think, 90% of drone activity is going to be delivery.
Yeah.
I think when we look at the commercial market, military being separate, I think you're going to see that's what most drones are going to be doing. When you look in the sky and find drones, 90% of them are going to be delivering stuff.
Hot dogs.
And I think what we're seeing from Part 108 is truly going to open that up.
Right.
And one of the things that we're looking at as a company and setting up a U.S. operation, in fact, is enabling the airspace from cities. So think of it as more like infrastructure. So in the same way you'd have internet service providers or you'd have cell phone networks, you have a detect and avoid network monitoring the skies, providing that data as a service to drone delivery companies, police drone as a first responder programs, really anyone who wants to operate in that airspace. You need to provide them with that data so they can do so. And I see that sort of, we'll call it radar as a service.
That's cool.
In different cities. And I think you're going to see a bit of, I think it's going to mimic what happened with the internet. When the internet rolled out, different cities would have their own sort of providers, right? And then you'd kind of move from city to city, and everybody had their different sort of cable company or telecom that was sort of running their local internet, right? And I think we're going to see that with drone delivery and sort of, I'm calling it radar as a service, UTM, whatever you want to refer to it as. I think you're going to see that, and they're going to start claiming cities. And so I think that, in the next 2 years, as Part 108 becomes real, I think you're going to start seeing that infrastructure play being set up. In the same way that you had to do certain work to make autonomous cars drive on the roadways, right? There was some infrastructure that had to happen.
Right.
Although looking back, it's actually been less than I expected.
Better quality roads mainly, I guess.
Better quality roads, yeah. and you'll be able to operate 24/7, different weather and so on.
Yeah.
And so I think we're seeing that same trend on the drone side.
Okay.
And again, I think it's going to come back to drone delivery being the major one.
So if you're a drone service provider wanting to get into beyond line of sight, DAA has been one of the detect and avoid has been the challenge, right?
I used to call it the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, yeah. And it's we've seen on drone systems, we've seen terrestrial systems like yours.
Yeah.
You're talking about radar as a service. So I look at your price point. You're at 180,000 US.
Yes.
Is that a turnkey system for someone to build out, or?
So one of the advantages of us being a BVLOS operator ourselves is so we know all of the steps that it takes to get to a full BVLOS solution, from filing for your permits, your maintenance. In fact, we have a whole software program called Tasker, which manages your fleet maintenance, your personnel, your duty cycles, all that type of stuff in the background. And so we kind of run into these stumbling blocks as we've grown, and then we implement solutions or discover solutions in the market. So Sparrowhawk is a complete DAA solution. It will solve that problem. It'll check the regulatory boxes. It'll interface with your ground control station. It'll interface with your drones and your training systems, such that, it really is. We help you install it. We help you get it set up in your region. We can put it on a vehicle. We can put it on a building. So a lot of our customers are mobile operators.
I saw you've got the Sprinter van rig that you've set up. So you're brand agnostic on the drone side then?
Completely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a parallel technology, or?
There's an interface between the two. So we'll publish your location to us, and our tracks into your GCS if you so choose. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You want a unified picture ultimately of what your airspace looks like that you're operating in.
So I'm just thinking in Canada, this fall we've got weight increases, we've got low risk beyond line of sight. One of the big questions we've seen recently has been from agriculture. So heavy lift drones, the T40s, the T50s, the 100 kilo spray drones, they want to go over that knoll, right? They're now beyond line of sight. You're basically saying radar as a service. Could this be something that a conglomerate or a co-op could get together and deploy this? Like, do you have enough coverage for, in Alberta, like a quarter section of land or something like that?
Well, a single radar will cover 600 square miles.
Holy cow.
We can also network multiple radars together if you want to get a sort of long linear, for instance. So from end to end, it's 12 nautical miles radius.
Right.
So a total of 24 nautical miles diameter, right? So that's a pretty big area.
Yeah. So big opportunity for cost sharing then, for sure.
Well, there absolutely is. And that's part of what I'm saying with this radar as a service is who should front the cost, right?
Yeah.
Should we front the cost? Should third parties set it up? Is it a government play? Every country's kind of trying to figure out what this is. Is this a pure infrastructure play? How about cities? Maybe cities themselves should, in the way that we sort of kicked off the internet revolution in that way.
Right.
But mobile cellular technology, that was very much a private industry. So
yes.
I'm not sure yet how it's going to play out. So we've approached a number of cities and so different economic regions. It started with sort of test ranges, but now we're also seeing a little bit more of corridors, flight test corridors. We've seen spaceports, aeroports, things like that, drone ports. And so a lot of those are sort of economic divisions of cities trying to say, come here first.
Cool.
So we're seeing those as well.
Yeah.
So in the end, who's going to pay for that implementation of the infrastructure? The nice thing about Sparrowhawk is you can just take your infrastructure with you, right?
That's right.
It's on your van.
Take
so
your ball
you
home.
have it. And so if you choose to share it and sell it, you can do whatever you want with that.
So the last question I have then is, in Canada, we don't have ubiquitous conspicuity, right? In the US, ADS-B is more common, the Advanced Digital Surveillance Broadcast.
Yeah.
There's still gaps that need to be filled.
Yeah.
And do you think that radar will is your main advantage that you can completely cover this, or what's the main difference between what you're doing and, let's say, remote ID and ADS-B and everything technology based?
So the beauty of radar, it won the Battle of Britain, right?
Yeah.
So this is a proven technology. We know it works. We know it tracks things in the air, right? So that's the first thing. So we know we can trust it. We've been running radars. We're running now in 4 different countries. We run a lot of them 24/7, and I can tell you about 5% of traffic who's supposed to have ADS-B do not. You either don't receive them or they're not transmitting. So we find that, for instance, we're deployed in the center of Dallas. We know everybody is supposed to have ADS-B in there, and I can tell you they do not. So what is that risk worth to you or to the FAA or to the other airspace users. I can't quantify that. I can just tell you what the facts are, and the facts are they don't have it.
Yeah.
And the beauty of our system is we use ADS-B and radar, and we score them against each other. So if we see a track on radar that's not an ADS-B, why was that, right? So we score that as an ADS-B, loses a point, right?
A non-compliant, right?
Yeah. So and you get that score in real time. So you can actually see how well your radar is performing in real time and how well your ADS-B is performing in real time.
Wow.
And it's pretty rare. I mean, it's hard to know a negative, but that both would miss it, right? I don't know that could really happen, but I guess it's theoretically possible.
Can this platform detect other drones?
Larger ones, yes. It's sort of a slippery slope because it will track things that it finds in the air.
Right.
We have tested it against things as small as a Mavic to 5 kilometers. We've tested more fixed wing 10 kilogram drones out to 15 kilometers. So the ability is there. What we're not at yet is the ability to classify.
Okay.
So that is a drone versus a Cessna versus even a bird.
Right.
And so the classification is the actual challenging part of that. And false positives too. So you don't want, if you're using this for a defensive product, counter UAS, like a prison, for example, you can't be generating a false positive even once a day.
Yeah.
It would be too much, right?
Yeah, you're going to ruin your sensitivity to it.
So that's somewhat of the challenge with that problem. So we're not a counter UAS solution, but it does track that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. It was a great chat.
Keep it up.
So thanks for watching this episode of our UAV Expo 2025 interview series here on Coastal Drone. If you want to catch the rest of the series, check out the full playlist link below. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe for more Canadian drone insight, training, and news. And we'll see you in the next one.